Okay, we are live on setting up Facebook Live, and I'm going to come over now and I'm going to turn the broadcast on.
Says Sarah Schulz is live now.
Facebook Live is now streaming and attendees are coming in.
Awesome.
Welcome, Attorney General.
Hey, it's working. Fantastic. Hi.
Hi, good. We're waiting for Anita.
Great. I know she's trying to get in right now. So, and also my,
Oh, wait, before you say anything, we are live streaming already on Facebook. And
all right. I know she's trying to get in, and also my division chief for my ENRA division, my environmental division, is trying to get on. So, because I thought he would join us too, so that he could assist in answering questions and talking about the situation. So
That's
I hope
awesome.
it worked out.
Thank you. That's great to hear. I'm glad that he'll be joining us too.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to turn your video off for just a minute, Dana. Okay.
Okay, sure.
To all the attendees, we'll get started here in just a minute. We are waiting for some of our panelists to join us. Give us just a minute here. Okay. Okay, I have Anita now.
Great, great. Were you able to get Peter on there? I know he's trying to sign in if he's not on.
Let me see.
Oh, hey, Anita.
There's Anita. I'm going to turn your video off for just a second, Anita.
Please do.
Okay, and we're waiting for one more person. That's right.
Yeah, Peter Manning should be trying to get on right now.
Okay, I'm not seeing a Peter in the attendees yet.
Okay, let me go ahead and text him and see what's going on with that.
Okay, but Sarah, just give me the word and I'll turn the video on for you and the Attorney General and Ms. Fox.
Thank you very much. Let me tell my stuff that we did.
All right, Allison, let's do it.
Okay.
So Peter says that he's on, he can hear, but he can't speak. So just so you know, he's there. His name's Peter Manning.
Alt A will open your microphone.
Great.
Because I had to do that. If you can hear me, it's because I did all day.
We can hear you. Well, thank you everyone for joining. I know that we're live now. We're working through some technical challenges, but I think that the behind the scenes folks can continue to work through those while we kind of do a little bit of introductions and get started. So appreciation for those of you who are able to join our space and our conversation today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sarah Schulz. I'm a community organizer, a community activist, a concerned citizen, a flood victim myself, and also a candidate for Michigan's 98th House District. And I planned this meeting and this town hall because I've been listening and hearing from so many people all over our community just about the heartache that we've all had to endure after the dam failures and the floods. You know, not only that our lives have been upended and our precious memories and our precious possessions have been lost, not only because we're overwhelmed just about the prospect of trying to rebuild our homes and our lives, but also because of the impossible financial situation that so many of us find ourselves in. I know all this because I've been listening, but also because I've been personally impacted by the floods. My home and my parents' home have received extensive damage in the floods. And so I empathize and sympathize with the frustration and just the heartache of all of this, and wanted to try to bring some folks from Lansing to help us wade through all of what we're dealing with to understand better what our rights are as homeowners in this situation, and also what the state is going to and prepared to do to hold the folks who are responsible accountable. What I'm hearing is people are getting insurance claims denied, even if they had flood insurance, even if they have special riders for things like sewer and sump pump backups, because, you know, and others who don't have flood insurance are getting denied too. Whether or not they're living in a floodplain, a lot of it having to do with the fact that this disaster was man-made, caused by negligence of those dams that failed. And I know this from dealing with it myself, but listening to so many other people. And in fact, on Monday, we heard that only 8% of the thousands of claims and homes that were impacted by this flood have gotten insurance settlements. The rest have been denied. So we wanted to listen to those questions. A lot of misinformation, a lot of rumors, a lot of information that folks aren't completely sure about, and bring in a panel of folks that can help us again wade through all of that. Because I met a family in Sanford the other day who lost everything. They had water up to their light switches in their one-story home, and now their family is separated and living in different relatives' homes so that they can keep a roof over everyone's head. They have no insurance, no savings, and really have lost all hope in their future. I know a family on the floodplain here in Midland, where they've had so much damage that means they have to jack up their house and fill in their basement, or else they can't live there, and they can't afford to do that. I know a family on Wixom who got denied for insurance, and then knowing that, tried to go get a home loan and could not convince the bank to give them a loan to fix their home because they did not have equity in their home. Why? Because their home doesn't have a kitchen anymore, it doesn't have drywall, it doesn't have flooring, so there's no more equity, so no loan. People are getting desperate. There's not understanding of FEMA and what that means. And I've heard from many people who are actually thinking that they might not be able to afford to rebuild and are considering walking away from their homes and our community, and we can't let that happen. So folks are asking me what their rights are as homeowners when it comes to insurance. And people are wondering how or if we will be able as a state to hold the dam owners accountable for the destruction that they caused by their man-made disaster. People are really just desperate for answers in our community. There's lots of questions, not a lot of answers. And so This town hall is intended to help us understand some angles of the disaster and some steps that we might take. So thank you for everyone who was able to devote some time tonight. I just will say that I'm just really sorry about what you're going through. So let me introduce some guests that we have here with us from Lansing, virtually here with us in this space. First, we have Attorney General Dana Nessel, who was elected in 2018. As Attorney General, Dana is Michigan's top lawyer and law enforcement official whose job it is to protect and serve the people of Michigan. And our other guest is Anita Fox, who is Michigan's Director of Michigan's Department of Insurance and Financial Services. The vision of that department is that all Michigan consumers will have access to insurance and financial services provided by companies that treat them fairly and are safe, sound, and entitled to public confidence. Attorney General Dana Nessel and Director Fox, I can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. It's so good to see you in this virtual space, and I just look forward to the day where we can meet again in person after the COVID crisis is over with. So I'll stop there and just see if you all have just some words to share as introduction.
Great. Well, I want to thank you so much, Sarah, for putting this together and for allowing some sort of forum for us to discuss some of these issues. I'm really grateful to Director Fox for joining us, because obviously her role as Director of DIFS is incredibly important. She's so knowledgeable about so many of the issues that I know are facing people in the communities that were impacted by the floods. And there are certain roles, obviously, in state government that my office plays, and other roles that her office plays. And so I think she's an incredibly important part of this conversation. I'm really grateful that she could take the time to be on tonight. She's also my Lansing doppelganger. So we look enough alike that we get mistaken for each other all the time. So whenever anybody gets mad and starts yelling at me, I'm like, I'm Anita Fox. I don't know what you're mad at the Attorney General about, but she's over there somewhere. So thank you for that. And thank you for keeping your hair similar to mine, Anita, so that we could continue to do that. Anyway, but that being the case, let me just say something to everybody who was impacted. Firstly, I have to say that as devastating of an incident as this is, and as much as everybody's life has been upended in a way that nobody could predict, to have that happen in the middle of a global pandemic, I honestly can't even imagine. For everything that we were all going through in this state, and now to be flooded out of your home, to have you lose all the equity in your home, or to be living in a house right now with the kind of flood damage that you have. My heart goes out to everybody. And I do want to make this statement so that it's understood. You know, one of the reasons why I really wanted to be Attorney General of this state was because I thought it was so important to have people in government, and particularly in this position, that were really motivated by just wanting to help the people who live in this state. And my job as the lawyer for the state who represents all of the state agencies, oftentimes, I had seen, or I thought what I had seen, were that you had an AG's office that seemed like it cared more about protecting and defending the state than protecting and defending the people who live in our state. And that was something that I thought needed to be changed. And so I guess what I will say in regard to this incident, because I think it needs to be said, is that I think it's important that where the state is responsible, that the state be held to the same standard as everybody else in regard to any injury that is done to our residents. But I've been really bothered, quite honestly, by some of the media coverage of this incident. And I will say that because I really truly believe that the state has been doing everything possible to try to hold Boise Hydro accountable for the issues that they've had. And I know that, we've worked close with Eagle, we've worked close with the DNR to make that happen. I know that there were a number of moves that were in place before this happened to try to get the task force to take over, because we understood that Boise Hydro had not been making their commitments, to FERC for, again, not days, not weeks, not months, not years, not even, decades worth of malfeasance. And then we were trying to work to ensure that you could have local communities and local homeowners actually take over and have ownership of these dams to ensure that there was proper maintenance and that we wouldn't have an incident like the one we ended up seeing, and that was in progress. But I think it is important for people to understand that when we talk about infrastructure, critical pieces of infrastructure that are actually owned by private entities, you're always going to have a situation where there's the concern that those private entities will care much more about profits than they will about people. And that is a concern over and over again. And whether we're talking about roads or bridges or unfortunately dams, that is an issue. So we are trying to hold Boise Hydro's feet to the fire, and I'm doing everything in my capacity as AG to hold them accountable. But our first priority above all else is to make sure, that people in these communities that have been impacted are safe, and that they're secure, and that they don't have to worry about another incident, and that there's indemnification for the damage that they've suffered. And we want to do everything we can at my office to ensure that that occurs. So that is my commitment to everyone. But with that, I know that mostly probably what you'd love to hear is from Director Fox, because I think that she has the answers to the majority of your questions. I'm going to say one more thing though before I turn it over to her, is that in terms of some of the things I'm going to say tonight, I really like to speak off the cuff because I think it's important that people feel as though they are hearing sincerely and genuinely from their elected officials. But I am going to be a little bit more scripted than I'm used to tonight, because there are so many lawsuits that have been filed against the state. And of course, there are lawsuits that have been filed by the state. And so when you hear that phrase, anything you say can and will be held against you, even though obviously these are criminal proceedings, the fact is anything that I say can then be utilized in any one of these lawsuits. So I am going to be a little scripted in certain terms of some of the answers that I'm going to give and that I'm providing tonight. And I want you to know why that is, because that's not generally my methodology when I'm engaged in these town halls. But with that being the case, I look forward to addressing some of these questions, and I look forward to hearing what Director Fox has to say about some of the questions that you've asked. And again, thank you so much for having us tonight, Sarah.
Thank you, Dana. And Dana, we were able to add your colleague, Peter Manning, to the panelist group. Did you want to introduce him first before?
Oh, you are terrific. Okay, so Peter, are you there somewhere? Well, I see your desk. You have a lot of cords and that looks very unsafe. So that's, I don't know much about technology, except for I don't know what's happening over there. It looks wrong. But Peter Manning is the longtime division chief for our environmental, natural resources, and agricultural division in our office. He's also a bureau chief. He has been there since the days of Frank Kelly. I think he just celebrated his, 25th anniversary at the office last year, Peter? Can't hear. Are you on mute, Peter? Okay, well, hopefully we'll be able to hear him soon, but he has worked very, very hard, as has his division, on all of these cases, and especially the case that we just filed against Boise Hydro. So hopefully we'll be able to hear from him a little bit and later when we're able to do that. So anyway, I'll turn things over to Director Fox now, though.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for including me in this conversation. It is a high compliment to be mistaken for Attorney General Nessel on many levels, and it's also gotten me out of the rain a couple of times as I was waiting in a line. So I appreciate that as well. But let me echo what she said about how much all of our hearts go out to the people in Midland in the middle of this crisis, double, triple crisis. I mean, there's the civil rights issues that are really, so impactful to really how everyone is feeling, and all the issues that creates, and in the middle of a pandemic and in the middle of what you're suffering on such a personal level. with your homes, and I want you to know that our hearts just ache for you when we turn on the news and watch as the water flow through. That we were with you and can't imagine the grief and despair. We've all dealt with little water issues and know how devastating a little bit of water in your house can be. So a lot of water is just unimaginable. I will tell you, what I hope to give you today are some resources. I won't be able to provide you what you most want, would probably be assurance that you're going to get insurance coverage from your policy or from through to your FEMA flood folks. But I can promise you a couple things. I can give you resources. I can give you an explanation. I can tell you the questions to ask. Everybody's policy, even your private policies, your homeowners policies, can have a little bit different language. I can talk to you generally about some of the issues. I won't be able to comment on anybody's particular policy or what has been done, but I can kind of go through what you can do and where you can go and how you can challenge a denial and try and reach a compromise, maybe even. So I want to let you know if I can't give you exactly the insurance you want, it's not for want of trying or for lack of sympathy for what you're going through. This is a very difficult one, and floods are always particularly difficult because there is this very narrow, space where the federal government backs these policies, and they're available in flood zones. And this is such an unusual, this isn't what they were originally thinking when they came up with those, even though it extends to these kinds of things. So, not everyone in an area, just because you have a right to live by a dam and think that it's going to be upheld, kept, and safe for your family to live by there, and may not have been thinking about the same way if you lived on the banks of the Mississippi, and so this is just so tragic on so many levels. And I know you almost don't need to hear that again. But I'm going to try everything I can today to answer your questions and maybe direct you where to go, and let you know that if once you've dealt with your insurance company or dealt with your agent or FEMA or whatever, that we do have a live call center that can help you. And I'll be giving you the number and website address and everything as we go along, so you can take that down. And we are here to help. That's what we do. We staff that year round, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and we really do want to be there to help you through this. But I'll wait until I kind of have your questions to go further.
Thank
And
you so much,
Peter
Director.
can jump in if he got back up to speed.
Peter, I'm wondering if you can hear me and if you can try to check your microphone.
It looks like Peter's mute. Oh, he's unmuted now. Peter, you there?
Peter, if you do Alt-A, it might unmute you as well. Even though you look unmuted, you might not be. Can you try that? I hear something.
Looks like his mic is not working. Is that what I'm seeing?
Okay.
All right. Well, why don't we do this, because I want to make sure that we are able to use Director Fox's time wisely, because she has a lot of answers. I know in terms of a lot of the questions that were asked, that it's Director Fox who's best able to answer those, since they are insurance oriented. So I don't know if you guys want to get started with those.
Let's get started with questions. It looks like we are working on some other technical challenges, and if I'm going to go ahead and press our luck a little bit with the technology side by just getting a sense of who we have on this call by doing a couple of quick polls in this space. So my technology specialist is going to be sharing a poll with everyone, and here's the first one. If y'all could go ahead and answer this question, this will help us understand kind of who is on the call, where you're coming from, what your situation is a little bit. So the first one is, where is your home located? So if y'all could go ahead and answer this and submit your answers, and we'll take a look at what we've got as far as participants. for location. We'll give it 10 more seconds. Okay, Allison, can you show us the results of the poll? Okay, looks like we've got a good mix of folks from the city of Midland, from the village of Sanford, some folks in Gladwin. We know, you know, especially folks up near and around Wixom Lake were impacted. Sanford, especially, you know, I was in a community in Sanford where 4 homes had lifted up off of their foundations and one of them floated away. So that's good to know where folks are located. Let's do another quick poll. This one just asked the question, Allison, can you put the next one up? This one has to do with, oh, that was the last poll. Just getting a sense of whether or not folks who are on this call tonight were on the floodplain and what their sort of situation was on the floodplain. So go ahead and we'll give y'all 10 seconds to answer this question and we'll take a look at the responses. All right, I counted to 10 in my head, so that should be 10 seconds. Let's go ahead and show us the results, Allison. All right, so we have folks in the 100-year floodplain, folks out of the 100-year floodplain, which is interesting. You hear a lot about floodplains in this community right now and what that meant for whether or not you had insurance or had to have insurance. I can tell you that my home that received damage, my parents' home, was not on a floodplain at all. We did not have flood insurance. And we hear that story over and over again. Okay, let's just do the last one real quick. Okay, if you are a flood victim, what have you heard from your insurance company? Let's do 15 seconds on this. There's a little bit more options here. Okay, I counted to 15. Show us the results, Allison. Yeah. So for the most part, what we're seeing here is what we're hearing in the community. Most of our claims have been denied. All right, thank you. I just wanted to do that little exercise to engage the folks on the call, but also to get a sense of who is on this call. And you know, there's a good number of people, so we don't have the option for everyone to share verbally. That helps us kind of know it from that perspective. Before we get to questions, I just wanted to say something really quick. You all know that we expected a lot of participants in this call, and that's what we're seeing. And given the limitations of technology, we just asked for questions in advance. So we could get a list of those questions, knowing that, you know, we had a limited amount of time and a good amount of questions, and we did get a ton of questions. So I will be asking questions from those that were submitted that are representative of the themes that we're hearing about, the themes that we saw in the question list. Some of the questions that we got pertain to very unique personal circumstances that may not get fully answered tonight. And for that, we'll be helping you know where to go to get your very unique personal questions answered. We will be looking to follow up with a Q&A document that will help sort of dig deeper into the questions that we just didn't have time to get to today. If you think of a question tonight that you didn't think of before, or you weren't able to submit it in advance, please feel free to share it either in the chat or go on to the link that we provided to ask the question. Again, this isn't the only time that you can ask these questions, and we will do our best to try to find you the answers to those questions. So thank you. All right. Okay, so I have the list of questions here. And the first one comes from a community member named Gabe, who asks, what steps should homeowners take to dispute denial of claims if they feel like they've been denied wrongfully?
Okay. I think I'll field that one. Sounds like something up my alley. So if I first depends on what you say an insurance claim. So there's two kind of avenues here that we have for potential insurance. We have the National Flood Insurance Plan. And a lot of that information, I'm going to tell you where you go. You go to floodsmart, all one word, .gov. And that screen, once you get to that, will walk you through, do I have a claim? How do I start a claim? What do I do? It gives you 800 numbers, it gives you places to go. Because if you get denied a claim, it also has a tab like, how do I appeal if I've been denied? So if you're talking about that kind of insurance, there is an appeal process right through FEMA. So again, it's floodsmart.gov, not .com, because somebody bought that and you'll get to some insurance company. So you want floodsmart.gov and go through that process. The second thing is now suppose you had private insurance and you want something covered for your sump pump backing up, malfunctioning, or your sewer backing up, or your basement just got flooded because you were near there, and you have private insurance and you have your homeowner's insurance. Submit your claim and it's denied. First thing I tell anyone on any insurance complaint is complain is first, you dispute it with your agent. Their agent should be someone who, especially if you use an independent agent, their job is to work with you. They sold you the policy and they can also help you follow up with your claim. You want to make sure you get whatever denial you have in writing, so you have their grounds down. So you're entitled to ask for that. Show me what part of the policy and what facts about my claim you're relying on to deny my claim. And if you don't deal with an agent, you go right to the company, ask them for the same thing, get things in writing. Then at least you have kind of the parameters. Okay, they're saying it's because of blank. And then that's the way you can first start saying, okay, what does the policy say about that? Are they wrong about the facts? Because sometimes they do have the facts wrong. And that, or sometimes they've just, some inexperienced adjuster has misunderstood the nature of your claim. If you still feel, after you've seen their explanation and you've gotten it down in writing, then the Department of Insurance and Financial Services, where I work, can help. And I'll tell you some ways to get a hold of us. So you can just Google Michigan Department of Insurance and kind of navigate if you don't want to kind of think of all the paths. And sometimes, honestly, I even do that when I go to look for our stuff because I can't remember which page it's on. So you can just Google Department of Insurance Financial Services and kind of look through, how do I file a complaint, or how do I get to your call center? We do, as I mentioned, staff a live call center from Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. And that number is 877. So it's a toll-free number, 877-999-6442. So if you dial that number, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, you'll get a live person and they can talk you through it. They may ask you to, email in or do something, mail them in, whatever you need to do, your exact documents, so we can look at, what insurance company you're dealing with. What have they told you? What's the language of your policy? So insurance policies, just to give you a 2-second, are a contract, right? They're like a contract you get when you buy something that requires you fill it out, or you do a service. And the courts in Michigan, at least, and I will defer to our chief attorney here, but I am also a lawyer, even though I'm not acting in that capacity now, and I have some experience with this, that the courts tend to say, look, if it's in your contract and you agreed to it, here's how we're going to enforce it. So you should read your contract and think about what it is. And maybe there's some other provision in your contract that you haven't thought about. Maybe there's another kind of coverage, and maybe they're just answering your question directly. You asked if I have sewer backup coverage and you don't. But look at the other places in your contract that you have water coverage or other kinds of things that were damaged. And ask your agent to help you do that. Walk through it, because that contract may have different places where you have coverage. And ultimately, the Department of Insurance can help you if you can't work your way through it. But That's what I would encourage you to do. Work with your agent, work with your company, read your policy, and then reach out to the department if you've been denied, and we'll go from there. I hope that's helpful information to get you started on what you do.
That was definitely helpful information. Thank you so much. I did not know there was a hotline that you could be called. So that's definitely new information, and I appreciate knowing about it. Okay.
That's that too. We do have a complaint that you can, a site where you can submit your complaint online. You go to michigan.gov, just the regular site, and for the slash DIFS, DIFS, Department of Insurance Financial Services, complaints, all one word. And you can, if that's easier for you, you've got, your policy online, you've got your, they've sent you an email saying why it's denied or whatever. It might just be easier for you to go to that DIFS complaints, and it'll walk you right through the process. Are you, you have this kind of claim? No. It'll take you to the next page. Have you already submitted a complaint previously? No. Okay. What's your name? It'll go through the thing. Do you have documents you want to upload? So that may be also a way, and then our analysts will review those as well and get back to you.
Okay, great. I noticed in the chat, Ruth is asking what that phone number is again. So I'll say, because I wrote it down too, 877-999-6442.
If I am capable, I will try and share that. Let me see if this may be beyond my capabilities, but I am going to try.
And actually, Director Fox, Allison on my team just did, so.
Wonderful. Okay, even better, because some picture of my, messed up.
Right. Okay, so the next question is kind of narrows the broader question that we asked first, and so the answer may be similar, but just trying to check to see if there's any differences with this specific situation that I have heard many times. So Lynn, a community member asks, although we have coverage for sewer backup and sump pump failure, and despite the city sewer pumps for our section being overflowed and shut down for several days, our insurance claims are 100% denied for the over 9 feet of water in our basement. They claim because the flood waters were involved, there's no coverage, even though the sewer pumps were shut down and obviously our sump pump failed. This also means that we did not get loss of use coverage we paid for, since they determined that there's no coverage. When I asked the adjuster about an appeal, he said, get a lawyer. We are facing over $60,000 cost to clean out the soggy muck, repair the structural damage, and replace the appliances. This is without any mention of likely $50,000 of personal property that was shoveled out as soggy muck. What can we do?
Okay. So this is one of those questions where it depends on what your policy says. So first, I urge you to go back and look at it. The way property policies work, meaning the kind of policy that you have on your home when you're trying to cover yourself for what loss you may have, as opposed to a liability policy. A liability policy is like if someone slips on your sidewalk and makes a claim against you, or your car insurance, that liability component where if you hit someone. Property insurance is this covers yourself. So the way it usually works is by having certain causes of loss and certain causes that aren't. So that's how come, like your liability policy doesn't care what's the source of your liability. It doesn't matter whether the guy's on your sidewalk, whether you threw a ball out your front door and it hit him in the head as he was walking by, all kinds of things. Did your tree fall on him if they're claiming against you? But how property insurance works, you have to look, and I'm telling you this so that it will be easier for you to read your policy a little bit. So they call these things perils. When you get to your policy, it's going to call it a peril. And a lot of them are, say, these are the perils that are covered. Wind, and they go through certain things. Or we cover every kind of peril. They call those an all-risk policy, except, and it may accept flood. So you've got to kind of figure out what kind of policy you have first. And then the second thing, is it an excluded cause of loss? And you are dealing with an issue that has been litigated like crazy about what happens when there's more than one cause, and one of the causes is covered and one isn't, right? So you might not have coverage if it were a flood, but you have coverage if it is a sewer backup or a mechanical failure that led to water damage or the like. And so originally, different states kind of came up with different ways of looking at that. Some said, well, whatever happened first, it doesn't matter if other things happen, whatever was the predominant cause, or divvy it up. If that part was covered by this caused by the sewer, let's do it, whatever. So after Katrina, which I'm sure right now sounds very familiar, a lot of insurance companies changed their policies to eliminate concurrent cause as something that you could recover on. And you'll see language in your policy that may say something like, if any of the cause of your loss are excluded, it doesn't matter if there was also a covered cause of loss, we're not going to pay. And so some policies have that language and some don't. So that's something that you should be able to discuss with your agent, once that's why getting that written denial and explaining to you what you've just asked me under your policy language and the facts of your claim, be able to understand. Are they saying it's because this was a flood and nothing else caused damage, or you have what they call anti-concurrent cause language? I know it's complicated, and I am sorry to insurance geek you a little bit, but I'm trying to help you look at your policy, which isn't that easy for most people. And look at those and ask your agent, ask your insurance company to put in writing for you. Explain to me exactly why, if I have sewer backup coverage, I don't have coverage for this. And I want it in simple terms, please. So then you can explain to me how come you're not willing to divvy up some of the costs, or if you can't differentiate them, why they're all in that column and not all in my column. And again, go through the same thing. Get it in writing, work with your agent, look at your policy, and read all the provisions and see if there's something that they're missing, and we can help you with that if you don't get a satisfactory answer. But depending on whether you're talking about the federal policy or a private policy, and depending on what the language of your policy is, I'm just guessing there may be some of that anti-concurrent cause language in your policy. But if not, they may just be assuming. I had a claim recently that I helped a resident of Michigan with, where they said they had a whole bunch, like severe. You might think raccoon can't cause a lot of damage, but apparently the whole family of raccoon lives and eats through your wiring and all your insulation and everything. This was, literally thousands and thousands, $20,000, $30,000 of damage. And they denied it and said that there was a vermin exclusion. But at the time, the policy that they issued didn't list raccoon. It listed what kind of things were vermin, and raccoon wasn't one of them. But in their new policies, they were, but they hadn't updated that person's policy. So all the claims adjusters were just rotely saying, yep, we don't cover raccoons. Just had one of these last week. We don't. But when their policy language was pointed out to them, theirs was different. So you just got to be sure that they're looking at the right language, and it may not. In the end of the day, I will tell you, coverage in the water area is one of the places where you really have to thread the needle sometimes, because there are a lot of exclusions, and that's why flood insurance had to be separately done through the federal government, because there wasn't a way for people to get it. Now, we do have a couple companies now in Michigan as you go forward. No, that's terrible to hear. It's like when my son tells me that I should be backing up my files in the middle of a computer failure, and I want to wring his neck. But it is important to moving forward, not to repair and not think about, how can you protect yourself. But I hope there's an avenue under your policy, and that I've given you enough information to at least ask some questions, and go from there.
Thank you, Director Fox. It's just a quick follow-up, right? Because I think it's related. One of the things that we hear a lot, and I hear a lot, is comes from folks who have flood insurance, and it seems like they're getting denied their claims because the reason for the flood was a dam failure, and not sort of a, a rainstorm or that sort of thing. So I'm wondering if that just question that just seems like, folks who did have insurance, thought they were covered, when the flood happened and called and were really surprised to hear that they weren't because of the cause of the flood. I wonder if there's any light you can shed on that issue in particular.
I know under private flood insurance, generally speaking, or private water insurance, they have not made a distinction between a man-made disaster and a flood. And I am not aware of the federal government having also made that distinction. The distinctions I've seen in the federal flood program, and I'm not an expert on the federal flood program, and I'm texting my folks while we do this to see if they can give me better information. But as I understood it, the flood depended on whether it inundated a large area and not just, for example, you could spring a leak in a pipe and it could flood your whole yard, but that might not be the kind of flood that's covered under a flood policy. We use the word flood to mean a lot of things. The baby flooded the bathroom. Whereas under the federal flood program, they've tended to talk about inundating large tracts of land that involve more than a person. So I'm texting my folks, and they're listening in right now, so that they can text me back and see if I'm wrong about that. But that may be one of those areas where if you go to that floodsmart.gov appeal process and work through that. Now we do work, we will work with you if you need help getting directed to that. You can still come to us, and then we can see if we can help you through that. So generally it's more on the thing of whether it's more than one property and an inundation, and not on this man-made versus natural. But my folks are telling me that they have not heard that as a reason on the NFIP policies, though there may be certain homeowners policies that may make such a distinction, or a private policy, but we're not aware of that being an impediment under the NFIP.
Okay, that is definitely a common theme that we hear in the community, that the denial, even if you had flood insurance, is based on the fact that this was a dam failure. So whatever we can do to kind of look into that a little bit more, I would personally appreciate it. Okay, so the next question is, this is from a community member named Ken. He asks, if people can't get flood insurance after the disaster, what should they do if they are then in violation of the terms of their mortgage?
Okay, so again, kind of breaking down what they mean by that they can't get it. I can tell you, getting retroactive coverage for the property that's already damaged from the current situation is always hard. Insurance tends to be about future risk. So that could be an issue. If you're talking about maintaining future coverage for another event, that may be a different story. I guess if this happened to me, I would first, shop around a bit with other insurance companies to see if someone else will, if you're talking about the federal program, it's the federal program and that's what you go for. If you can't get it there, you might want to try. We have a couple companies in Michigan that are writing private health insurance, and I believe that those are posted on our website, but I'll get that confirmed while we're talking as well. And if I were sure that I could not find an avenue, I certainly would reach out to my mortgage company, my bank, my credit union, and say, I don't want to be out of compliance. They have the same interest in having your home protected that you do. They don't really want your house. They want their loan paid, and they want to make sure that their collateral, the house, what they would get paid for if you stop paying, is protected. So they may be able to work with you or with insurance companies or with the federal government program in a way that you're individual, you don't have the same kind of clout that they might have because they have volume business. So I would urge you to reach out to your bank or credit union, whoever holds your mortgage, and see what you can do. You know, even if you have a federally backed mortgage where there are 800 numbers and the like that you can reach out and say, I want to maintain in compliance. I'm having different right now on the homepage. I've just been reminded of our webpage. If you go to the DIF's homepage by going to Michigan Department of Insurance and Financial Services, we have a banner up on the first page with flood resources, and that's some of the resources that the I thought I had to get a dog, but he's good. That we have up there information. If you click on the banner, you can get a list of private flood insurance companies as well.
Okay, great, thank you. So this next one related to insurance kind of has to do with kind of how insurance works with other insurance. So Lori, a community member, asks, she says, if our next door neighbor had a large swimming pool and it collapsed, it flooded our house, she says we would probably get paid. Our insurance company would go after the pool's owner insurance company. So she's saying the dam broke, in essence, like a large swimming pool. Our insurance company denied our claim because we did not have flood insurance, even though the failure of the dams was induced by improper maintenance and repair. The dam should have held as they did in prior torrential rainfalls. So shouldn't they pay damages and go after the dam owner or the dam owner's insurance?
So what she's talking about, let's talk about this. When an insurance company has a covered claim, they will pay and go after the party that caused the damage. Many times they do that. Absolutely correct. The problem here is you have to determine first whether there was a covered claim. And as we talked about, for flood insurance, in my experience, under those federal flood policies, they have distinguished between a flood that causes kind of widespread inundation. Now, maybe if the water was from the swimming pool was, not just going into her basement, but there was a claim on another property too, they might have looked at it as a flood, but most likely what they did is look at it just kind of as a water intrusion that wasn't a flood, and therefore didn't trigger the flood exclusions under a homeowner's policy. Because it wasn't that kind of inundation over the land that we did. It's an intrusion of water from a source. So I understand intellectually, obviously, the similarity, right? You got a concrete that fails from bad maintenance and it causes water intrusion. But I think that you're running into the difference of flood. I'm getting some information from some people who on the line here who have some information about how those flood policies work, and they're telling me that that generally, 2 properties, 2 acres, that there are parameters on how much land has to be inundated to be considered a flood, and that probably is exactly what happened here. Can't be sure, but unless there's a covered claim, the insurance company doesn't go after them, because what the insurance company is really doing when they go after someone, they're not doing it for you. They're doing it for them. They've paid a claim. They're responsible to you under the policy, and they want to get the money back from someone else. So unless they have an obligation to pay for you, they're not going after anybody. And sometimes you can be caught between that. And so you get paid if you have a covered claim, and that's why you have insurance, and they may try and get their money back from someone else, but that's not your problem, right? However they get paid back or don't, you want to be paid now. But if you don't have a covered claim, you're not in the same situation.
Yep. Thank you.
I wish I was not the bearer of this kind of news. I like to be able to tell people how we can help more and how there is more coverage. This is a very tough area. I feel terrible even being the messenger for some of these messages.
But the clarity in the message is what's important, right? We need to know what we're dealing with here, and
with what you're going through. But
and what we've had up until now has been a lot of conjecture, a lot of rumor, a lot of, if you use these words when you call your insurance, you'll get approved. If you use these words, you'll get denied. And so I mean, even though the answer isn't, is in more steps, right? It's still an answer from a source that we can trust from the state.
And never get yourself in a situation where you you use words people told you to use that aren't true to make an insurance claim, because then you'll be tripping up, and I'm sure Attorney General Nessel could tell you, you don't want to be, insurance fraud is not something that's worth it to anyone. The more hazards you'll bring down on yourself from doing that. So I've heard people say that sometimes, look, just tell them it was the whatever. And eventually they will find out. They're going to do an investigation, and you may even lose the coverage you had that was covered for having made a misrepresentation in a material way. So I would just caution people, it may seem tempting to do what your neighbor did if they somehow were successful under their policy, but if it's not your true facts, don't do it. Not worth it.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Really good advice, Director Fox.
Okay, this last question, so this is the last question on sort of insurance related, and then I have some questions that came in kind of about the dams and the owners of the dams and accountability there. So the last one has to do with, hold on, let me find it. Okay, so Jenny, a community member asked, our insurance claims were denied, so we tried to take out a home equity loan to repair our home. We were denied by the bank because we don't have any equity in our home anymore. Because we don't have a kitchen, we don't have drywall, all that came out during the flood. What can I do to get the banks to cooperate so I can get the funds that I need to fix my home?
Well, that's a tough one. You can call us also. We also supervise the banks and credit unions, and we'd be happy to kind of work through that process with you as well. You can call that same number, 877-999-6442, and we can kind of work through that. Again, bank loans, the banks are also regulated to make sure that they're making loans that people can make good on. We saw what happened when banks extended credit without having collateral, and that wasn't good for the state either. So I would continue down that path. I would, and try and see if there is some portion of it, or, get part of it at least going. I would also suggest that you start looking at some other resources that are available for these kind of problems like that. I know that because the president has declared on the governor's ask, the area disaster zone, that there's some assistance. I know you can go to disaster assistance, all one word.gov, to see what's available. I know that Community Action, the Mid-Michigan Community Action Agency, has some information on, where you're caught between all these things that don't cover you. They may be able to help you. I think that's mmcaa.org or 989-832-7310. They have some information. The United Way has some information on grants and other things you may have. You can dial 211 for that. MISHDA, the Michigan Housing Authority, MSHDA, if you go to Google that, they have information. The Red Cross. I mean, I would start looking at every avenue I could where there may be money available for basic needs, for rebuilding, or other things. While I tried to pursue that, I might, go to a credit union or a bank that maybe isn't affiliated with your mortgage and say, look, I have income. Here's my job. I've been a steady payer on my mortgage, on everything. I am planning to rebuild, and see if you can get an unsecured kind of loan, or secured against something else that you have, or, just based on your credit worthiness, to try and get the money you need to do, and then maybe switch over to home equity to pay it off because it may be a better rate once you get some of that stuff rebuilt, the basic stuff, to have some equity, then transfer some of the over to a home equity loan to get the better rate. Those are the kind of things I would suggest.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that advice. So Director Fox, I think you're off the hot seat, and
so I would love to hear from Attorney General Nessel, and again, please let me express how sorry I am that you are going through this at this terrible time. And And we are here to help. I mean, my staff may be able to be more specific about things. We obviously can't change what the policy language is or how they've been interpreted by the courts, but we can direct you to resources, if nothing else, or help you get the information from your company or to fight back and maybe come up with a compromise or with them. So we're here to help, and I'm sorry for what you're going through.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all of those resources. I know that Allison on my team has been capturing them and putting them in the chat. We will also share out all of the resources to the community after this call. Okay, so we did get a good number of questions in from the community just about the dam owners and kind of the accountability there. So the first question comes from a community member named Eric. He asks a simple question: why does Boyce Hydro still have the dams? Why did this happen to begin with when the owner himself admitted that they weren't safe?
Okay, well, thank you for that question. Let me, before I get into this issue, I just want to say that, you know, the thing about insurance, and this is why it's so great to have Director Fox here, is that, you know, no one really understands their insurance policies until they need to use their insurance. And whether it's homeowners insurance, auto insurance, health insurance, it's amazing to me, and I'm not here to trash insurance companies, but it's amazing to me all the loopholes that exist, that you go into a situation thinking 100% that you're going to be fine in the event anything like this happens. And it's not until you get into that situation that you find all the very many ways there are for your insurance company that you have dutifully paid your premiums to year after year after year, that when you finally need that policy and you finally need that insurance, there's a million different ways in which they can avoid having to compensate you and to allow your claims to go through. And I can't imagine the frustration that people are going through right now. And it's one of those things where I think we have to continue to learn when we see an incident like this, that it impacts not a dozen people, not 100 people, but thousands of people, what we have to do to better regulate the industry to make sure that they're also held accountable, so that we're not just paying insurance companies really for no services at all. And so people really know and understand what it is that they're paying for and what they are not paying for. So just a little comment about that. I know that's not helpful, but we have to try to learn from these experiences the best that we can. But in regard to your question that you just asked me, Sarah, and again, these are more areas that I know it's so frustrating for everybody. And I have to tell you, it's frustrating for me too. You know, when I first started to get real detailed information regarding the situation after the dam failed, you know, I can tell you, I was absolutely shocked to learn that FERC had allowed this company to continue operating the Edenville Dam for some 16 years, despite knowing and understanding that they had these very significant issues regarding the operation and the safety of the dam. And so even more maddening is that during the period that Boyce continued to bring in money operating that dam as a hydroelectric facility, they still refused to invest in the basic safety of the dam, even though they were making a profit off of it. Now I have, to this day, I heard a lot from Boyce, but I have never admit them say that the dam wasn't safe. And I would be certainly interested in anything documenting that utilized during the course of my lawsuit. And if Boyce had admitted that there was a serious safety concern, really all the more reason then for them to be held accountable. So my direct answer is Boyce has proven, obviously, that it shouldn't be operating dams. And honestly, this incident never should have occurred in the first place. But this event has demonstrated that there are fundamental problems with how federal government regulates these facilities. Now, FERC should not allow a dam it regulates to continue violating its rules for decades. I think we can all now agree on that, right? FERC should also not be able to just revoke a license and then just drop the problem it helped to create on state governments, particularly when FERC refuses to share critical documents about the dam's design and its safety until the state assumes responsibility of it. So unfortunately, 3 of Boyce's dams are still licensed by FERC. So regulation of those dams is still controlled solely by the federal government, which is important for people to know and understand. Now, at the state level, I think we need to take a very, very hard and comprehensive look at the statutes that regulate dams. So Part 315 of the Dam Safety Act of the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act, that's something that we have to take a very close look at. And also how we fund our dam safety program. So these are things that honestly the legislature badly needs to change. And we look at these things, we look at, for instance, this waste standard, which I bet nobody ever thought about before, nobody even heard about before this happened, right? But that's the amount of water that a dam needs to be able to pass through when there are floods, which is only about half of the federal standard. Our state standard is half of what the federal standard is, and it's obviously not enough. We also need to be able to look at whether EGLE has adequate enforcement tools to get the necessary information that they need and to take quick action to address a potentially unsafe dam. And finally, we need to adequately fund dam safety programs. And we currently, I'm sure most of you know at this point, I'm sure you were all shocked to learn that we have 2 dam safety inspectors for 1,100 dams that the state regulates. And so I guess what I want to make clear here is that if it was easy, when this was all dumped from the federal government to the state government in the fall of 2018, after all those years of FERC saying to Boyce Hydro, you know, you have to do something, you have to do something, you have to do something. And when finally FERC just threw up their hands and said, well, you're not doing anything, so I guess we're just going to walk away. We're going to, you know, revoke your license and, you know, we're out. You know, it would have been nice for there to have been the ability, the legal authority for the state to come in, do an evaluation and say, holy cow, this is an unsafe situation. We're going to go ahead. The state is going to take over the dam and the state is going to fund all the maintenance or perform the maintenance or hire the engineering staff that we need to perform the maintenance. And we're going to get this fixed as quickly as possible because at any time now we could have, you know, an enormous amount of rain and we could have the flooding ensue that you know, that really, I don't want to say anybody could predict, but at some point was bound to happen at some point, especially since we've been seeing more rainfall than ever before, you know, in my opinion, due to climate change. You know, but it's not that easy. And so what you see is you see private entities like Boyce who would scream and yell and sue in the event that the state ever tried to just come in, take over, and perform that maintenance. Also, who's going to pay for that maintenance? I mean, you have to understand that it would be the state's responsibility to come in and pay the millions and millions and millions of dollars to fix a dam that's not even owned by the state. And so I think what's really important is that we look at all the things that led up to this event. And to me, quite honestly, the answer is, you know, you don't let private companies, private entities that have proven that they're not responsible enough own a critical piece of infrastructure to continue that. And you have to have a mechanism where the state says, you know what, we're done. You're not doing the things that you were supposed to do. You're creating an unsafe situation for all of these communities. And we get to take over and do the things that we need to do to ensure the safety of this dam. But it's not that easy to do. It's a very lengthy, very complicated process. And quite honestly, EGLE was in the process of working with the Four Lakes Task Force, and they were moving rapidly to ensure that you could have this community group take over. And I want to just correct some misinformation that's out there. And I've heard people from the Four Lakes Task Force say, well, that matter was made more complicated by the litigation that had been filed by the state, and it's not true. It's absolutely not true. A specific exception was made, and the state made certain that any litigation that the state brought to ensure that there was compensation for damage to natural resources was not going to interfere with the Four Lakes Task Force taking over the dam at all. And that's all in writing, just so you know. It's not something that we're just saying later on, and this was an understanding we had. And I want to make something clear. I know I'm going on for a long time about this, but it's very important. The things that you hear about how this has been handled by the state or how it's been handled by Boyce, I just want to make this absolutely clear. And since Director Fox is a lawyer, I know she can back me up on this. The great thing about lawsuits is everything is in writing. Everything. So all the pleadings are in writing, whether it's the complaints or any motions or responses, court orders, all in writing. Transcripts. Anything that happens in court, you never have to say, well, I wasn't in court, so I guess there's no way for me to know what was really said there. Yeah, you do. There's a court reporter. This is by law. You can't have court hearings with no court reporter, and you have transcripts of every single solitary hearing. None of this is done in secret. So when you ask yourself, what happened here? What happened? What did the state do? What did Boyce Hydro do? I really ask that you evaluate the things that are on the record here. And I just think it's so, so important. I see here a situation where you have this bad actor who behaved very, very badly over the course of this long period of time, who does not want to take responsibility. And yes, the state of Michigan is responsible to the extent that it would be nice that if we had stronger laws. It would be nice if we did more in the way of funding for EGLE and DNR and other agencies that require that funding. But when you ask, why did this happen? It happened because we had a private actor that never did the things that they knew that they needed to do so that they could operate this dam safely. I mean, that's the long and the short of it. And I know I don't mean to be in a position where I'm trying to point the finger because the finger's been pointed at us, but let's look at the actions of this particular entity, and let's figure out a way that we make sure that the state can have greater oversight than they've been able to have up until this point, and understand the significant importance of that role, that we have to have regulation. This movement towards deregulation, why is the government always getting in our business? This is why, right? To prevent this kind of thing from happening, we have to have the right rules, we have to have the right laws in place to allow state oversight so that nothing like this can ever happen again. Sorry, that was a really long answer, but when people say, how could this have happened? This never should have happened. I agree. This never should have happened. Let's learn from this.
Yeah, thank you. That was really important background to what led up to what happened. And that, as it's playing out, one of the reasons why I wanted to have this town hall was to make sure we had a venue and a place to voice sort of the truth, because just like there's a lot of information swirling about insurance and all of the rumors about that, same about sort of what happened and what led up to that. So I appreciate you sharing that. And then sort of like the continuation of that question. So that was what led up to it happening. You talked about some ways that we might put some safeguards in place as a state to make sure it doesn't happen again. But we do have a bad actor here who is an entity, a private entity, who, in my estimation, basically checked out the minute that these dams were not being a revenue source for him, and the minute that the cost of having them exceeded the benefit to him, he, from his seat in Las Vegas, said, "I'm out," basically. And all the people who suffered because of that are my neighbors and my community members. And there was no accountability to him and to the decisions and the bad decisions that he made that led up to the disaster. So Stacy, a community member, asks, now that this has happened, what can we do? What could the state do to hold that bad actor accountable for his bad decisions?
Sure. So you probably heard, most of you probably know that the state filed a lawsuit on behalf of EGLE and DNR against Boyce just this past Tuesday. And that lawsuit seeks to hold Boyce accountable for violating laws and damaging Wixom and Sanford Lake and downstream waters. And it also seeks to make taxpayers whole for the public money that was spent responding to the incident. But importantly, the lawsuit first seeks to compel boys to address the portions of the Eatonville Dam holding back and diverting the Tobacco River. So the berms in that area have been damaged and they present a safety issue which absolutely have to be addressed. So when we filed the lawsuit, we also filed a motion for a temporary restraining order, otherwise known as a TRO, and that would require boys to take immediate action. But unfortunately, and very consistent with the past practices of delaying action and avoiding responsibility, Boyce removed our case. It's called a removal, and removed our case to federal court before the state could actually get a court to issue an order in state court. So my office immediately responded in the federal court, and we're working hard to get the case returned to state court and to get an order binding Boyce to a specific schedule to address those safety concerns. Now, unfortunately, and again, this is the law. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not happy about it, but the state of the law is that our office cannot bring damages on behalf of individual landowners. And I know that people are surprised to know that. But when you look at us pursuing claims, and you, for instance, hear things like, oh, you know, the AG's office cares more about protecting mussels than people. Why aren't they getting damages for us? Well, because the law allows us to get damages for natural resources, but not for individual landowners. So we utilize the law in any way we can, the very best way that we can. But we can only do what we can do for the existing under the existing law. So in pursuing our claims for the damage that Boyce caused, you know, obviously we remain very sensitive for the need for individuals who are impacted by this event. And we need to make sure that first and foremost, they're made whole and they're able to return to their homes and businesses. So it's very, very important to us that in terms of once we get a better idea of the financial viability of Boyce Hydro, that money should not first go to the state. That money should go first to individual property owners and business owners in the area. I mean, in my opinion, that is, when you look at who gets compensated first, that money, and with all due respect to others in state government, to Director Fox and to everybody else, I think we all agree the people that money should go to first, if there's a limited amount of funds, should go to property owners and not just back to the state, to our general treasury fund. I think that's incredibly important, and I want everybody to understand that those are our priorities. So we are suing where we can sue for the things that we are allowed to sue for. And we absolutely, I mean, we support the actions of individual landowners, and we want to do everything we can to ensure, and this is what we can do, is work to ensure as best we can that Boyce has to meet their commitments now in a way that we can know that there's not going to be further damage from things that are, you know, on the cusp of occurring if we get another big rain. That's stuff that we can try to do at this point. And we are working as aggressively as possible. And that's why we wanted to get this lawsuit filed as quickly as we possibly could.
Well, Attorney General Nessel, I mean, I think it's important to also point out that if you get a finding that the dam owner is legally responsible for the damage, that would be very useful to private claimants, I assume, in trying to establish their costs. So the state will kind of use its resources through you and your extensive and experienced team to establish that the dam owner is liable. And that'll help a lot for people who want to bring their private claims and then they just have to kind of prove their damages.
Exactly. Well, thank you for mentioning that, Director. And that is what we intend to do. And, you know, we are going to do everything we can, again, to hold Boyce's feet to the fire and to prove, obviously, the liability here. And then hopefully that will assist in all these individual claims for everybody. So we're going to work as hard as we possibly can to that end. Thank you for bringing that up, Anita.
Thank you. That was a good point. Attorney General Nessel, I did want to mention, I think your colleague Peter Manny is able to answer any questions or add any additional information if it's
Great.
at a point that we want to do that.
Peter, if you're there, do you have anything that you can add to this and talk a little bit more maybe about our lawsuit?
No, I think you covered it well. So, and I'm so sorry for the technological problems. I do not look like the back of a computer. I am a person. But no, I thought you covered it. I thought you covered it very well. Again, the first priority is to make sure this one part of the dam that is still up but is damaged gets addressed quickly.
Okay. Thank you so much. So I'm conscious of time. I want to give all of you an opportunity to sort of add any final thoughts before we finish up.
Well, I'll just say, again, we're here at DIFS, through those resources that you have in the chat, and we want to help to the extent we can. And we will work hard to push. I know, as Attorney General Nessel said, part of what we do as regulators is hold insurance companies accountable. We can't change the policy language, but we can certainly make sure that you're treated fairly, you're given an explanation, and where there is coverage, that they don't just blanketly say there is no coverage. So we want to help. I think what the Attorney General is doing to pursue the dam owner is really important. You got to go at this from all places. I think what you're doing, Sarah, to bring the community together to talk about resources and get them information is so important. And I think we should continue these conversations and maybe even bring in some of those community groups to see what kind of resources they have for people who aren't getting instant relief. I assume another thing that the Attorney General will do is try and, once they can get into court, to try and secure any assets that company has early on, that before people have a chance, before he has a chance to get rid of those, before people can make their claims. So it's really important that the Attorney General has moved so quickly to get in there and hold this dam owner accountable, because we can't just answer it in one place. This is too big of a problem to just look at a certain kind of insurance or just going after the dam owner. We got whole community has to come together with a lot of resources. So I really thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Director Fox.
And I wonder if before we wrap up, Peter, do you have anything that you want to add about the lawsuit at all that you think people should know? I know you said, thank you for saying I covered everything, but I know I didn't. And I know you've been working very hard on this. Can you talk about any additional ways that you think this lawsuit could be helpful for people who were impacted?
Well, I think, again, an important component is that we are going to try to seek all of the people that were impacted, as well as the rest of the citizens in the state, are taxpayers, and the public is also paying for people, the first responders, to be out there. The state is going to spend a lot of money. Local units of government are going to spend a lot of money, and that impacts all of us. And we're going to try to recover that money as well. Again, no, I think you covered that. We are using every tool we have to hold Boyce accountable. I think Director Fox made a good point that if we are successful, we hope to be quickly successful. That will help the private lawsuits as well. And again, the resources that were damaged, it's not just about esoteric things. It's also about things that do impact people. We now have 2 places that were lakes that are no longer lakes. Those were important assets to the community. So we're going to do everything we can to try to rectify what we can. So yeah, other than that, though, I think you covered it well.
Thanks, Peter. And I will say that, normally I would be up there right now and be walking around and going to community groups and trying to answer as many questions as possible. And obviously, unfortunately, due to the COVID situation, we're all trying to figure out what the best method is for us to get together. And that's why, Sarah, I really appreciate you having this event, giving Director Fox and I and Peter the opportunity to address some of these questions. But I want to assure everybody this wasn't the only time that we'll be answering these questions. And I know, Director Fox, you've actually had some other town halls where you've answered some of these questions. but we'll be doing this over and over again. And as the lawsuit moves forward and anything that occurs in regard to the litigation, we're going to be as transparent as possible so that everybody knows what's happening. We'll be as transparent as possible in terms of the findings that we make, in terms of anything that happens in terms of the investigation, and when we can use that investigation for further action. Obviously, that'll happen as well. And I think the most important thing that we can do is just try to keep the public updated on everything that's happening and try to push forward on this as aggressively as possible. And we're determined to do those things.
Thank you. So much information from the sources that we can trust in this situation is absolutely critical. So I just really appreciate that so much now and your commitment to doing that on a continued basis. So let me just end by saying again that I'm just so heartbroken over what everyone is going through and what our community is going through right now. We flood victims have so many questions, and our plans and our lives have just been upended by this disaster. When you think about the things we were planning to do for Memorial Day weekend, and most of us were in sewage-filled basements, cleaning out those basements together. And I also know it's true that our community is really strong and will find strength and will continue to find strength in each other. And never before has that been more apparent than in these last few weeks after the flood happened, where we see neighbor helping neighbor, where everyone has had these lived experiences of just helping each other. And I know that I've been filled with gratitude over so much help that my family got in the aftermath of the flood, and just really grateful to be able to provide some help to others as well. And so I just think if there's a little bright spot in all of this darkness, we've found it in each other. So I just want to thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you to Attorney General Dana Nessel and Director Anita Fox for your time tonight and your knowledge and just your commitment to us and to this community and to continued communication and support. So thank you, everyone, and I wish you a good weekend, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks so much, everybody. Really appreciate you having us on. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you.